Hi everyone, my name is Vanessa and peace and love to you. I hope y'all are doing well wherever you're tuning in. We're going to jump right into this. So the question is narcissistic behavior losing its power? Not that it's disappearing, but are we becoming more aware of it collectively? Is it not being able to hold up the way it used to? Let's dive right into it. If you're new here, hit that like and subscribe button. Again, my name is Vanessa and I'm happy to be here with you all. There has been a shift, okay, and we're really gonna feel it the end of September. I feel for this equinox, okay, September 22nd, we're entering fall. There has been many eclipses this year, and there's been a lot of shifts happening on a personal level, on a interpersonal level. That one is key, especially when we're talking about narcissistic behaviors, and on a collective level. When I do readings with my clients, there has been a commonality that I've seen over the past few years, okay? I've been doing readings professionally for about 7 years now, and I wanna say since maybe at least 5 years ago, I started noticing this trend where light workers, people that are meant to bring light into the world, that have some kind of purpose, and it doesn't matter what you're doing to bring light in. You can be a sports commentator and you're bringing in light. You can be a hairstylist and you're bringing in light. It's about what's within and how you're pulling that out of you from within and out into the world, how you're sharing that. So a lot of empaths can be light workers, but not necessarily. So what I found with my clients is that predominantly all the light workers were dealing with some kind of karmic toxic ex, some kind of toxic karmic old best friend, family member, and a lot of them have narcissistic traits. Now, when it comes to narcissism, spiritually, something else is going on. So mentally, that's a diagnosis in of itself. I cannot diagnose anybody mentally. And what I'm speaking of here is mostly traits, not necessarily narcissism. Okay, just even the traits. Is that starting to lose its power? Back to spirituality. So when it comes to the spiritual context, how I personally view narcissism is kind of what I've been taught around demons, spirit attachments. People that have spiritual attachments can easily turn into having and developing narcissistic traits. I wasn't taught this. This is my own observation of narcissism spiritually. I find that people that are narcissists tend to have demon possession, spiritual attachments attached to them. And the way I was taught in shamanism, back to the spiritual attachments, basically when souls leave this earth and they don't feel like they're worthy of going into light because let's say they were a suffering spirit, they can linger. And when they linger, they're lingering on lower frequencies, lower realms, lower dimensions, lower boundaries. And people that are lingering in those boundaries tend to attach. They want to attach to a host. They need a host. So what we're seeing in 3D with people, like not everybody that you see or encounter is just operating as like flesh and soul. I mean, they are, you get what I'm saying. They're not just like a normal human. They can be possessed. They can have spirit attachments. They can have lesions of spiritual attachments. That's why a lot of times priests go in and do exorcisms. It's a real thing spiritually. So again, what I find with narcissistic behavior is that this is a very commonality. A host has, they've looked for a person to host. And this is some of the behaviors that it shows up in. It's very self-serving, very ego-based, very opportunistic. Okay, and the narcissistic behaviors can show up overt or covert. It doesn't have to be so obvious. A lot of times people that are light workers or the black sheeps of the family can be born into family dynamics where there is a narc, okay, where there are karmic connections. And before I get into the family dynamic, I did break the deck randomly before starting. And right when I broke this deck, it literally says, shine, your light irritates their demons. Okay, so this attraction between empaths and narcs, and like I was saying, being born into these family dynamics, sometimes your parent can be a narcissist, whether it's covert or overt. And what I find also with narcissists, again, back to spirituality, is that oftentimes they can be tied to us in karmic ways, karmic relationships. Like it can be a karmic friend or a karmic ex, who is extremely toxic. And the reason why y'all even connected in the first place is because there is karma to be worked out in this lifetime. It is because in this lifetime, you're going through a repeat of whatever lessons weren't learned in the past life. And that toxicity in that karmic person transfers over into this lifetime. And the universe is like, well, are we, let's see if we can give you another chance, if you'll do better. And, let's say the person goes on their journey and they're just picking up spirit attachments. These things can happen. I don't want to dive too much into that. I'll stop there when it comes to the context of what I view narcissism as spiritually. But yeah, it's starting to lose its power. We have all heard the saying that narcissists are attracted to empaths. That's kind of their target. They're going to go for like the sweet person, the person that's more coy. I'm sorry, not coy. The person that's more, loving, warm-hearted, et cetera, et cetera. They feel like they're easier to manipulate. So they do have their targets, but collectively there is a shift happening. I mean, look at what's happening in our world right now, really over the past few years. People in official places of power have not been able to hide so much as were the people that are more sensitive to feeling, okay, empaths, collective empaths, that are like, something just doesn't smell right, something doesn't feel right about this. There's so many examples that I could name, but I'll just talk about what's presently happening in Mississippi with Nolan Wells passing only a month and a half ago. There is, for all we know, and this is just my opinion, okay, for all we know, there is a whole state cover-up happening before our eyes. And when I say state, I'm talking state officials, governors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the thing is, if narcissistic behavior was not losing its power, this would have easily flied by. Nobody would have questioned anything. Life would go on as business as usual. However, because collectively we are starting to raise our frequency, we are starting to raise up in our vibration, our consciousness is heightening. Okay, people are starting to see things that they were not able to equate before. They're able to connect dots better. And this is happening at an intuitive level, at a higher consciousness level. And so with that, narcissists cannot really hide. They cannot hide behind their badge. They cannot hide behind their titles. Okay, that's just a title. That is not, I read something really powerful the other day. It was actually about the Jezebel spirit. So I won't be surprised if that comes up in today's reading. In this video, but the Jezebel spirit, it was a quote saying, God loved Jezebel, but the Jezebel, it was basically saying it was not about the title, it was about the fruits that they delivered. And I felt like that resonates so much because for the longest time in our society, living in a capitalistic world, living in a patriarchal world, titles have kind of ruled the world. And status and socioeconomic status and labels, etc., exclusivity, all the things, right? But a lot of that is actually starting to lose its weight. How much are people actually valuing all of that in present time? I think there has been a lot of corruption that people have seen through over the years. And again, simultaneously add that to people starting to collectively wake up and tap more into their intuitions to be like, oh, something doesn't feel right. I can see through that. They're not going to befool me, okay, with all the buffoonery happening, basically. So that is what I feel like is at hand. There's a shift. And I did, if you watched my last video, or I think it was I think it was my last video, I did mention how I heard this Carl Jung talk about how empaths are starting to be on top and that narcissists will not be able to, they'll no longer be able to dominate, really. For a long time, that is what helps sustain our society. Think about it. A lot of people that have been on top, not all, but a lot of people that have been on top when it comes to having a capitalistic mindset have had to at least have had narcissistic behavior or traits. So the point of the Carl Jung video was basically stating that, I'm not going to get too into it. I don't want to make this video too long. We're going to jump right into it, into the meaty and nitty gritty of it all. But the point was that empaths are able to read a room. They're able to see a narcissist, spot them right away. And those manipulative tactics are not going to work anymore. Let's say you've been scarred by somebody who did you wrong. Let's say it was a family member or a friend, a best friend betrayed you. And then like after the betrayal, you're looking back at like, wow, there were so many red flags. Why didn't I see the manipulation? All of that processing is a process of you growing on your journey and learning how to thrive through situations so that now you can better adjust when you see those tendencies in someone. So a little bit about what I'm picking up intuitively, and I think I'll kind of talk about this throughout, is yes, what I said before, we are collectively heightening our intuition, our consciousness is heightening. We're just a lot more tapped in. Our frequency is higher. Everybody, for the most part. I can't speak for everybody because it almost feels like there is a divide. Back to what I was saying about people that have these entity attachments. And it's not to say that people that have entity attachments or are possessed by a demon are any worse. It's giving compassion and empathy to them because that can happen to anybody. At one point in time, it probably happened to you. Okay? People can be very susceptible to these entities walking in. Okay? Sometimes people in certain cultures call them walk-ins. You can be very susceptible. So when it comes to all of this, what I feel like is happening on a greater level is people taking their power back. I feel like on a deeper sense, people are saying enough is enough. You're not going to play with me. I'm not here for the BS. And enough is enough. My dog just barked. Yeah, you could be a lot more protective over yourself at this time in general. A lot more loving towards yourself, a lot more respectful towards yourself, where you're like, because I respect myself, I'm not going to tolerate this behavior in anybody, whether it's that they're a narcissist, whether that it's traits or behavior. You are not putting up with it because you have too much self-respect, and a lot of you watching me, you'd rather be alone. I don't know what that's about, but yeah, so that's what I'm picking up intuitively. Let me see if there's anything else I'm picking up. There is going to be a great shift and divide. I am getting this energy where it's like people versus liars, people versus narcs. And it's not going to be so obvious, but that is what it is. Okay? That is what it is going to be. Because if you take Mississippi, for example, and you think about the people that are taking one side, I'm talking about the far right side of things, and they're just taking the side because they're right-wingers and et cetera, there's narcissistic traits to that. Like, where's the empathy and compassion for what's actually at hand? And the question we've all been asking, which is, what happened to Nolan? But all of a sudden, all the officials, the townsmen, all the people are moving real funny. But then collectively, people are like, something doesn't seem right about that. Okay, so anything else? I feel like there's this great awakening happening with people loving themselves more and rising even higher. So it could feel like a divide at some point. It's going to be a stark contrast with how people operate and live in the world. Some are just living in light. And I'm not saying to be oblivious and like, oh, everything is rainbows and roses, because it's not. But people that are living in love versus hate. Narcissistic behavior, people with narcissistic traits have an incapacity to love fully, have an incapacity to love genuinely. And you would know if you've dealt with narcissists and what the recovery of that looks like. There's tons of books on it and tons of therapists that dedicate their whole careers to that specific topic for a reason. So yeah, I do feel like there is a shift, and I do feel like empaths, light workers, beings that are just living in love and that are on, I don't want to say the right side of right, but are living more righteously, that are living with more reverence, are going to start rising because there has been a declaration of reclaiming power, reclaiming one's power. Because a lot of times when a person is dealing with a narcissist, the narcissist is the one that's controlling that person's power. It's like the person, the empath, the light worker just gives it away, knowingly or unknowingly, consciously or subconsciously. And then the narcissist is feeding off of that energy. But I'm hearing no more. Something is drawing the line, and I am grateful to Nolan Well's spirit for starting this shift and really putting a mark in history, because I feel like a lot of people are starting to wake up and see more clearly and demanding more self-respect, more fight, more answers, more of, no, we're not going to listen to you because of your title. Because at the end of the day, and the beginning of the day, what does that really mean? What weight and value does that hold if, again, the fruits of your labor, the fruits of your actions are not showing something just, something righteous, something good? Narcissistic behavior tends to ride the wave and live a life of lies, being cunning, manipulating. That's what they're doing 24/7. They're on a 24/7 basis. They are being manipulative, manipulating themselves and manipulating everybody around them. And we are getting to a point where that is not going to hold weight. They cannot keep tricking everybody. There is a trickster spirit in the energy that is no longer standing strong. Okay, so there is a need to, though, I feel like, for empaths to stay vigilant, to stay on their path and keep loving on themselves. It is an act of self-love. Some empaths are being called to rebel against the systems and people that be. And again, and this could be, and put it how it fits to your story, because this could be, again, in a family dynamic or in a relationship dynamic. And I mean, it's a classic story, right? Someone's with someone and they're like, oh, but I can't leave, but it's so toxic. And it's like, why are you still with them and what are you doing? But it does get to a point where this person decides to look within and be like, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm calling my power back. So I do have a few questions I'm going to ask. We did see your light, you shining, is irritating people's demons. Okay, that's usually people with narcissistic behaviors, traits, tendencies, or narcissists. You're irritating their demons. Again, the demons are inhabiting them on a spiritual level. That is what I feel is happening spiritually to people that are narcissists. Spirit, what is changing collectively around ego, narcissistic behavior? One thing I'll say too is I feel that collectively, it's interesting. This is like a loud car or a motorcycle. I feel like narcissism goes hand in hand with big ego. It goes hand in hand with big ego. And I think that collectively people are starting to become more aware of, oh, that's not as glamorous as I thought it was. Think about Holly Weird. Think about people with like expensive cars showing them off. Like, people kind of don't care as much. Okay, people don't care as much. Think about social media. Everything is shifting, but if you look at the crux of it, there is this underlining energy of narcissism that is no longer holding its validity. It's no longer holding the weight it once still used to carry. Okay, we're not going to go into that. Spirit, what is changing collectively around ego and narcissistic behavior? What is changing collectively around ego and narcissistic behavior? Please and thank you. Okay, makes sense. Okay, so there's a lot going on. Change is the first card to show up. Big change is happening. The people that were in power can no longer be in power the way they used to be. It's just not going to fly. It's not happening. Divine feminine. Collectively, we are stepping more into a divine feminine energy. The patriarchal energy that has built everything we see today is no longer sustainable. And that energy that built everything we see today was very masculine, even somewhat toxic masculine energy. However, with what I'm talking about now, with narcissism not holding the weight and standing as strong as it once could, there is a shift and an opportunity for change to come in with people stepping more into their divine feminine. And I'm talking about an energy here. It doesn't matter if you're a man watching me. It's about moving more in this like centered, empathetic, intuitive, creative energy. It's life force energy. Okay. Now with this, what's happening collectively with this change and people stepping more into their divine feminine and the divine feminine taking more of a rise and more of a stance and more power, evil eye. Okay. The narcs are going to be big mad. They will not be happy. They're not going to be saying hip hip hooray. They're going to be very upset. But the interesting thing is, apparently they're going to also be confused. This is the card for Narcissus. I read Ice King, also King of Swords, the King of Intellect. Narcissists are very smart, very intelligent beings. This energy is going to be confused and giving evil eye to the empaths, the light workers, okay? And not only are they going to be giving evil eye, a lot of them could fall susceptible to health concerns, which makes sense because narcissists energetically feed off of light workers and empaths. They need that fuel to feed off of. But what's going to happen when the empaths and light workers start pulling their energy back, they start pulling their power back, what are the narcissists going to feed off of? Their supply is going to be gone. Okay, it's going to be gone. All right, so there's this huge shift happening there. Why are these patterns becoming easier to recognize? Why are these patterns becoming easier to recognize? Okay, there we have it, self-love. These patterns are becoming easier to recognize because people are loving themselves more. That's the answer. People are starting to love on themselves more. They're doing the work. People are doing the work. They're journaling. They're saying positive affirmations. They're saying, you know what? I'm tired of having a negative mindset. I'm choosing to change my mindset from negative to positive. That is self-love. People are, again, with that example I gave, deciding to pull themselves away from people with narcissistic traits and tendencies, whether it's family. People are starting to demand more respect, starting with self. So this self-love is why people are starting to become more aware. And then what happens when people stop participating in these dynamics? I just saw bad karma. Bad karma just flipped out. Spirit, what happens when people, well, I guess that's what's going to happen. You pull your energy back, you starve the narcissist, and their karma speeds up a little bit because they can't feed off of you. What happens when people stop participating in these dynamics, Spirit? What happens when people stop participating in these dynamics? Romantic love affair. They're going to be trying to come in through sexual motives, okay? They're going to be trying to come in through sexual motives. They're going to be kissing ass. That's what this says, kissing ass. And this says an offer. So they're going to be doing everything they can. They're going to be very desperate for their fuel. Okay, true narcissists will become very desperate as people start becoming more aware, as empaths start pulling their energy back, as we collectively start shifting more into the divine feminine energy. They are going to be very desperate. Okay. And then what is the spiritual lesson or guidance for us moving forward? I mean, I feel like it's self-love, to step into our power and to know, I think there's a big message around empaths and light workers to know that they are good enough, that they are worthy enough, because a lot of times narcs manipulated them out of their place. A lot of times people with narcissistic behavior and tendencies would want people that are empaths or light workers to dim their light. It made them feel uncomfortable. Light workers would ruffle their feathers and they didn't like the attention they naturally got or their light itself. There's a need to keep shining bright. Shine bright like a diamond. The veil, there's a lot hidden behind the veil. Spirit, what is the spiritual lesson or guidance for us moving forward? What is the spiritual lesson or guidance for us moving forward? Divine feminine. The spiritual guidance for us moving forward is to keep stepping into your divine feminine energy. Again, we are in the age of Aquarius. That is the complete opposite energy of the patriarchal eras, okay, that we have lived in and cultivated. So you're going to see more and more people feeling called to live on land, on connecting with the earth, Mother Earth, connecting with making their own fruits and vegetables, gardening, farming, connecting with more things that are in alignment to, again, the divine feminine. So you will see a lot of that. And that is what we're being guided to do. You're going to find a lot more holistic ways of healing. People being like, I don't know if I want to take that medication. I want to look into the natural herb of doing this. Okay, so that is shifting in for us. And with that being said, I really think this is beautiful. Again, we will be dealing with a lot of jealousy and envy because why not? Narcissists are already jealous and envious of empaths to begin with. Let alone, don't let them start knowing their power and taking their power back. Okay, this energy is going to be starving, okay, for what they've been wanting to acquire all along. So make sure that you all are staying protected and protecting your energy and going within. There's a need to keep going within at this time, really connecting with your soul, really connecting with meditating. You know, nobody's saying you have to be sitting in silence for 20 minutes a day, although that would be ideal. You don't need, it's not about being completely in silence. It's about sitting with self and taking the time and reverence to go within. You will start seeing more people connecting with their own personal rituals, with their ancestors, with practices that their ancestors or indigenous roots have participated in. Okay, but with that said, y'all check out my website, Sacred Ceramique. I do make handmade ceramics for you to embark on daily rituals, connecting with your ancestors, or just for beautiful home decor. Also check out my book, Believe in Your Soul. It's available on Amazon. And if you want to book me for a one-on-one reading, you can come with questions. The info is below. Thanks for watching. Peace and love. Bye.